Welcome everyone. I am just sharing my screen here. We are looking in true GitLab fashion at the GitLab handbook. In fact, even truer to GitLab, this is not in the handbook yet. It's in the review app of a work in progress MR that will be merged later today, adding a page to the handbook for product release updates. This will collect not only today's session and the media related to it, but things like the 13.0 launch, the version 12, that's 12.0 through 12.10, year in review, that's a blog post and video and slide deck, and things that you could consider a product release update will be on this page. I will actually use it also to launch the deck for today. Some of this content will also be handbooked, but not all of it fits exactly in a handbook page. So bear with us as we get to be more and more handbook first and website first. We're looking at 3 releases, 12.9 through 13.0. We'll also look back in time and a little bit ahead, and there will be a lot of links. We did this 3 months ago, looking at 6 months, and this particular slide was really popular, so I actually brought it back and updated it. So we were looking at 12.3 through 12.8 and the rapid innovation differentiator and how much we had added per version over those 6 months in terms of significant features and per tier. And then we zoomed out just a little bit to look at significant new features and improvements. So that includes things that are really important, like performance improvements, but that are not technically considered features, and so they don't get framed that way in the release blog post. They are in the post, they're mentioned, and then you get links to documentation. So it's only stuff that's significant enough to be in the release blog post that feeds the visualizations you're looking at here. And over 6 months, yeah, we saw, well, that's a nice lift. We're actually not just innovating rapidly, but we're innovating more and more rapidly. That's cool. But what if you zoomed out? I did that version 12 year in review just a couple weeks ago. And when you look at 12 months, it's like, wow, it's even more obvious. We've increased the speed of our innovation by 100% over the 12 months. So folks like Mike in Tech Docs, they feel the disturbance in the forest and they're like, wow, it's going so much faster than it used to. Even a couple of months ago, it wasn't this fast. And he checks the data and sees essentially the same thing, very slightly different numbers. I love it when people look at things in multiple ways and basically get the same result. The exact number, like 860 over a year, that doesn't matter as much, but the ballpark matters, and the trajectory, of course, matters a lot. There's a little bit of pushback I got from last quarter's product release update that the rapid innovation differentiator or even the open source differentiator are a little bit like old news and a little bit like they're just holistic, right? So they're attributes that make people feel good about doing business with us as opposed to being really values-based. And I want to push back on the pushback and say, no, actually, I think those two things are hugely important in addition to the collaborative customer experience, because of course they are also contributors. A lot of the value being added to the product is being driven from those community contributions. For the version 12 year in review, I zoomed out over 3 years, and you can see a couple of years ago as version 10 closed, we were getting something like 100 community contributions merged per monthly version of GitLab. And that's now up 100% as well. What's better than 100? How about 200, right? So we have an incredible amount of contributions from the community. And it's not old news in the sense that those contributions keep going up and to the right, while our own generally rapid innovation keeps getting more and more rapid as well. And even to extrapolate from that, that number 860, it occurs to me, in the next year, if I'm thinking about buying GitLab, I'm not just buying what's in 13.0, right? I'm buying the opportunity to enjoy 1,000 significant new features and improvements in the product over the year ahead. So it's important that we're not only selling what's in the product right now, but also selling this trajectory that we're on, our roadmap, how open it is, and our awesome track record of delivering on that roadmap. Heard a lot of people make that point in QBRs and just thought I'd say that out loud in this update because I thought it was a really valuable point as well. All right. I have some slides here that I'm not going to talk a lot about, including the double flywheel model of how community contributions matter. I just wanted to make sure that they were in the deck. So if you wanted to look at the speaker notes under this one or any of the others, you'll find lots of links to sort of give some more background for some of what I'm saying out loud in the session. The significant features added, again, over 6 months and then zoomed out over 12 months. Even just in terms of those significant new features, you can see us with like 100% more rapid innovation than even a year ago. So really powerful stuff, I think. And all pulled, by the way, from publicly available data sources, like our public dashboards for community contributions, things like that. So anybody else could go out there and produce the same visualization or an equivalent. A lot of what I pointed to a quarter ago in that release update was the release posts. And there was a little bit of pushback on this one from just a couple of folks who said, those are super long. You really want everybody on this call to read that whole release post? And I said, no, I don't really mean read the whole thing, but everybody on this call should definitely read the top part. And so I tried to screen cap even the 12.9 release post. It's ridiculously long. In terms of trying to make a screen cap for a slide. You had to snake it around, right, to get it all on there. And yeah, they're long, but the top part is just 500 words, take you 5 minutes to read. Product marketing ghost writes it. It's very values-based. The differentiators, the use cases we're working on, the buyer personas, all that stuff is dancing around in our heads while we carefully choose those words that are useful for all of you in telling the story, not only of this release, but of GitLab in general. So definitely read that. And I also said you should all read the key features. 3 months ago, there were only 5 of them per each release. That is now like a dozen or even a little bit more per each release. We've had 40, I think, over the past 3 months. I still think you should all read that. And part of it is just we're releasing so much more every month. But we're also double clicking on that and trying to decide whether we should keep a lid on how many features are called key in a given month. Just so you know, that is a little longer, but all that content is written by folks who have in mind this basic question, not just in terms of documentation, how does this work, or how do I use it, but what's it good for, like why? Why should people care this has been added to the product? And so that should shine through the content there. And that's what this is all about, of course. We're here to talk product, but in terms of value. So I say that not just because it's kind of fun to use these graphics and stuff, but because we're not going to talk about a lot of the details, and certainly not the more technical aspects of what's new in the product. There is a lot of material out there, and the rest of my slides give you some more links to that material. Some of it's gotten really, really good. I would say from all quarters, we're actually improving on the material we're producing about our product. Since 3 months ago, the Field Flash newsletter was launched, and it does exactly what I just said. It tells you what's new in GitLab, what's in that release blog post, but per value driver. And Monica, brilliant job with this in the whole newsletter. Read the whole thing, but especially to this part of it, what's new in GitLab, she's writing it with the PMM who is the messaging lead in that month. So I'm not really going to have a better version of this than whoever worked on that month's release blog post. This is just fantastic the way it is, and absolutely the way I encourage everyone on this call to consume the content first. Some of what's in the newsletter is GitLab confidential. So you get an email version, and a slightly scrubbed version is then up there in the handbook. So you can just go to the handbook, click on the link in this slide, and you will find the last 3 months of this, and this is what it looks like. And again, couldn't advocate for it enough. It's just exactly sort of what we're here to do right now. And you see, that's a bit of a theme in all this. I started doing it just like I did 3 months ago, looking at key new features according to value driver, also according to the more functional differentiators, so those that align really clearly with areas of the product. And here are the top 12 or so from the 3 months. But as I got into it, I think I got to 25 or 30, and there was not a clear pattern. And the point of using a rubric like this is to try to find some signal, like, hey, are we investing heavily in these 3 months over here or over there, or what does it mean? The fact that there wasn't a strong signal is also a kind of a signal, right? I take away that it's like holding a mirror up and saying, yep, that's GitLab. Like, yep, something for everyone. You know, entire DevOps lifecycle delivered in a single application. Yep, it's a platform for everything. And so I think that's actually great. And then in any 3 months, we should have at least a few significant things for each of our differentiators, for each of our value drivers, certainly, there being only 3 of them. And that was just kind of a nice validation of it. It wasn't something where I came away saying, boy, in these 3 months, we really optimized for Kubernetes. You know, not so much. So that doesn't mean nothing. It means good things, I think. In 12.9, in addition to just linking you to the post, which again is the real authority on this, I pulled out some things like new in, let me get some of my UI out of the way here, new in Ultimate, more efficient vulnerability management on security dashboards, auto remediation of vulnerabilities found per container scanning, super cool to have auto remediation. Expect more of that kind of thing in GitLab in the future. So I pulled some things out onto these slides, but really you're gonna get most of it and the best way to tell the story from the post itself. That stuff gets worked on not only by really great folks, but reviewed by everyone up through the leadership of the company. So very carefully vetted material. And yeah, I've pulled it out here, but I'm not actually going to talk a lot about what's on these slides. We all can read, and all of us should read what's in those posts. The version 12 year in review is something I also would point to. I put it together myself a couple weeks ago. This would take you straight to the blog post version. It's an easy breezy read. I point to it partly because, again, like there isn't a really strong narrative if you're just like, what did we do 12.9 to 13.0, right? Those 3 versions are not engineered in such a way as to mean something as a group of 3. And I don't want to force a narrative onto them and give you a story that I think is great about them if I don't think the story's really there. If you look at something like all of version 12, the whole beautiful story of GitLab in recent history is all there. And that's actually a really great way to frame up what's new lately. And then the 13.0 launch also has its own really great story and was a celebrated launch for lots of reasons, including just how much is in there. And so I would look at version 12 year in review and 13.0 as great stories in recent GitLab history that you could all reuse in some way in terms of product release updates, instead of trying to say, what's the story 12.9 to 13.0? So 13.0 here is the sort of standard slide, but also pulling some things out, telling you which tier new features slot into, and giving you links into the more material. In terms of the community feedback on 13.0, it has been awesome. Even some of the industry news posts about it, like at devops.com, are doing better than most of the posts that they've ever had. That's great news, that it's so popular, not even just on our own website, but the news about it. I pulled a couple of comments out of Hacker News, customers and users celebrating our transparency. They love that that roadmap is there. They love that they can see us all having debates about what should be in the next version, or what this means and how valuable it is. And they love participating in that. So that's all being celebrated, I think, properly. If you want more product detail outside of just what's in the posts, which is a lot of detail by itself, but you want it in video form, by all means, check out Learn at GitLab. Dan Gordon and his TMM team doing some amazing work there. A lot coming out soon, but a lot that's already really great. For 13.0, being as celebrated as it is, the TAMs and essays and folks in customer success just generally actually did a showcase. I think this was just yesterday, but here's a link to the playlist of all of their customer success skills exchange sessions. The one yesterday was really nice in terms of demonstrating, and shortly, but with some technical depth, each of the most important things, in my opinion, in 13.0. I agree with what they chose to demo and to discuss, and they talk a lot about why those things are valuable. So I would go ahead and consume that video content too if you want to double click into 13.0. And then the future, everyone knows how awesome the future is going to be. I just love it. My computer is accidentally full of pictures like this. Of course, in 13.0, we do a fair amount of looking ahead. That's what we do with a major release. But there are also some other good examples in recent GitLab history of looking ahead. This is a copy paste out of that blog post. But Scott Williamson, EVP and product, also recorded a video. It's 5 minutes long to celebrate and mark 13.0 and to talk about the future. Give him 5 minutes of your time. That is a great video right there. With some apologies to anyone watching this later who's not a GitLab team member, we have some GitLab internal videos that I want to make sure everyone here has seen and that are extremely relevant to product release updates. The worldwide go-to-market field update. We do it once a quarter. This quarter, it was canceled as a live meeting. So it disappeared from everyone's calendar. And I think, just asking around, I think people misinterpreted that it didn't happen. And what happened is we did it asynchronously. So please, if you're on this call and you haven't yet watched the video from that quarterly update, go back and watch it. I link you directly to the product update part, but of course McBee leads it off, and it's the whole regular quarterly update. Very well worth watching. There's some detail on what Scott talks about in terms of product updates. And he also led a product group conversation. Again, GitLab internal content here. I'm not listing all of the important things because some of them I don't even want to say out loud in a public call, but there's some really important stuff and some really exciting stuff in those videos. The first one is 5 minutes, I think, in the worldwide go-to-market. I think the product group conversation recording I linked you to is 15 minutes. So give Scott 20 more minutes of your time, but seriously, it's well worth it. You'll know a lot more about what's coming up and what's going on in prod. The investment themes have not changed a whole lot since we were all together in beautiful Vancouver, British Columbia, just up the street from me here. But there's been a little bit of focus on theme number 3, and I thought it was worth actually calling it out. We are still investing in monitoring and in the rest of ops, but we've removed that to some degree from this third bullet point to say we're really focused in fiscal 21 on world-class security. Right? And that's about staying a little bit ahead of where most of our users are, making sure we're ready when they are. And I think that's clear when you look at a lot of the details, but I thought it was worth calling out as a bit of a shift at the highest level in terms of investment themes. I pointed a few months ago to these direction pages. They have actually continued to improve. There's really good stuff here in terms of storytelling about GitLab and what we're planning to do in the rest of this fiscal year, but also in the next 3 years and why, what we're not going to do. All that stuff is there. One change worth noting, the CICD direction page has been rolled up into the ops page. So verify package release are now on the ops direction page. Update your bookmarks. I'm sure you all bookmarked that when I shared it a quarter ago. The look ahead also includes a monthly kickoff call. There are lots of kickoff calls. When you go looking, you'll find, like dozens of them in every month. Don't watch them all. Watch the ones you're really interested in, sure, but definitely watch the one general kickoff call. I think everyone here can find those 20 minutes. It's really well worth it. It's high level stuff. And so here's a link to that. Tells you what's coming up in just a few weeks and actually goes out 4 days before the previous version is released. So there's a little bit of a do-si-do there. 13.1, because it's next, there's a lot of material out there. You can see the way we list it on the pages I'm linking to includes call outs for what tier that feature is coming in at, and also includes, this is a sort that I ran for just the highlights. So just things in 13.1 that we're anticipating will be considered highlights. No guarantees when we actually sit down, and I think the writing has actually already started, but when we really sit down to write it and rank things and haggle. But at the moment, these are the things we already think should be highlighted in 13.1. So all of that is there for the taking. That gets me to my thank you slide. And before Q&A, I actually have a question for the crowd on the call here, which is, considering the Field Flash newsletter, considering Learn at GitLab, and a lot of these things that are the direction pages, all these things actually, and there are more of them that are better than they ever were in terms of product release updates. I came to creating this session's content and felt a little bit like it was done. And I should just make sure I curate all that stuff, because we all have tens of thousands of words flying by our eyeballs every day inside the GitLab bubble, and make sure you knew where the good stuff was and what I thought was worth your time, in addition to a little data and analysis. But what I'm asking is, was this worth it to you as an enablement session? Should we do another one every quarter? It may be pinched a little just by the fact that we just turned the page on a major version. So there's a lot of release update material out there right now, but I'm feeling a little bit like this could be considered redundant, and I want to make sure it's not, that it is valuable. So that's a question for you, but please, anybody else chime in with a question, and if you just want to answer that in text, you're more than welcome to.
Yeah, I've been, Tim Poffenbarger here. I've been thinking about how product, so currently within our organizational structure, the product team and the engineering team are separate. And I kind of feel like marketing and customer success or the sales organization are kind of team is doing that are kind of in parallel to the sales organization and vice versa. So if anything, this is helpful because I think it gives us a chance to get some visibility into some of the work that's going on in marketing.
That's good to hear. And I do think some of these resources are wickedly hard to find, like weirdly hard to find. You're using Google to search their own stuff in docs. And I was joking with somebody yesterday, that Google, they should start a search engine. Because even when you use it to point it at their own stuff, it's surprisingly hard to find some of these files out there. So maybe there's a usefulness in terms of the curation function too. Q&A.
I'll continue since I wrote down a question in the doc. First off, I just wanted to say thanks for rolling these metrics up. It is encouraging to see that where we're doing things well, and just to show that the proof of us growing as an organization in terms of numbers is paying off in some regards. Do we have resources that outline who at GitLab is the DRI for different about.gitlab.com pages and resources like the vision pages? So is that a product or an engineering or marketing ownership thing? Things move fast, and a lot of times, or there are times where I see some of the marketing materials kind of fall behind. And it'd be nice to know definitively who I need to be pinging to say, hey, what can we do to improve that?
I like that comment because it's my life too. I've also lost minutes of my life here and there finding out who's responsible. There's always the Git history, right? And you can always find out whose fingerprints are on a thing.
Absolutely.
But that's not great always, right? And it's not great for everyone necessarily. We're making it better. Everyone at this company can use GitLab. Everyone at this company can use Git. But it's not the friendliest thing in the world in this regard. I have seen some pages pop up things like a last updated date, and yeah, DRIs. If anything, those are usually referenced in the handbook, which is not always immediately connected to that web page you ended up on our website. So part of it's that disconnect. It's like you could search the handbook and find out, but I think it would be better if it was right there, at least for the types of pages you're talking about. I'm going to take that feedback back into marketing. We've got some good powwows coming up with product marketing and with the content team and with folks who are the DRIs for some of what you're talking about. Can we just manually add who you should ping or when it was last updated? like to the bottom of the page in cases where we want to make sure that's as easy as possible. I think we can.
Thanks.
All right, we got about 5 more minutes. Any more questions? Well, if we don't have any more questions, I don't mind ending early, going once, going twice. Before we go, though, I would like to say everyone please contribute and fill out the survey. It's linked in our notes document for today's session under call to action. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Cheers.